I do think that if Japan wants to show the world that it too should be reckoned with, then maybe it really should have nuclear weapons.
Tatsuaki Takahashi grew up in Hiroshima.
The city of Hiroshima lies prostrate after the withering blast.
On August 6, 1945, an atomic bomb dropped by the United States left the city in ruins and eventually claimed more than 200,000 lives. The memory of that day spurred pacifist Japan's anti-nuclear movement and the adoption of its 3 non-nuclear principles: never to produce, possess, or allow nuclear weapons in its territory. But 80 years on, that pledge is being tested.
China has been increasing its military spending rapidly, raising concerns that they might invade Taiwan. And if that were to happen, I fear that Japan could be the next target. Then there's North Korea, which keeps shooting missiles. Even though these are tests, they are firing them frequently.
For decades, Japan has relied on the U.S. nuclear umbrella, Washington's promise to defend its allies with the full force of its military, including nuclear weapons. Then, Donald Trump was elected on an America First platform, and his criticism of traditional U.S. allies and alliances has raised concerns over just how reliable American security commitments are. For years, Takahashi said he believed in peace through diplomacy. But now he says Japan may need nuclear weapons to stay safe.
I think it would be quite significant if the US were to withdraw. Japan has the self-defense forces, but they are not an army, so it's impossible for Japan to go on the offensive. That means there would be nothing to protect us. We wouldn't be able to defend ourselves.
And it's not just civilians questioning the status quo. In March, ruling party politician Rui Matsukawa attended a security summit in England. Her observations there reinforced growing concerns about whether the U.S. would come to Japan's aid in a conflict with China, as Europe was awakening to the fact that it could no longer rely so heavily on the U.S. to guarantee its security.
I think we have to be prepared. The U.S. will basically come into the mode of isolationism. And then they are busy with their own things. They don't care much about the world.
The March meeting in England made Matsukawa realize that U.S. security guarantees were no longer a given. But Japan was in a different position to Europe, she said. It's surrounded by nuclear-armed neighbors: China, which is rapidly expanding its arsenal, North Korea, and Russia.
So the rest of the world needs to think about, during this period, we need to work together and then fill the gap, the vacancy that's created by the U.S. withdrawal in economy or maybe in the world affairs or rule-making.
But she says that at a time of geopolitical upheaval, the U.S. remains an important ally, and that it is crucial for Japan to persuade President Trump that it is in America's interest to defend the East Asian country. An official in the Trump administration told Reuters there are no changes in U.S. policy toward Japan. The president and his aides have said they're committed to America's allies in Asia. Japan's foreign ministry says it considers the Trump administration's commitment to the U.S.-Japan alliance to be unwavering. And China's defense ministry says it opposes attempts to hype the so-called Chinese nuclear threat and is committed to its no-first-use nuclear policy. Japan is currently home to the largest overseas concentration of U.S. military power, including an aircraft carrier and fighter squadrons. And it's already strengthening its military and exploring deeper cooperation with U.S. nuclear forces, 2 former U.S. officials told Reuters. Some Japanese lawmakers and former military commanders suggest deploying American nukes in Japan, or even joining a NATO-style nuclear sharing agreement.
Unlike other countries, it's not easy for Japan to go nukes, and I think it's not really politically possible at this moment. That being said, for example, employing or introducing the American nukes in case of the emergency, that's possible, I think.
Beyond this, some are beginning to think the unthinkable in the only country to have suffered an atomic bomb attack. Japan might have to ultimately acquire those weapons of mass destruction itself. Public opinion is shifting. Polls show a greater readiness to rethink the country's non-nuclear stance. But not everyone agrees. A survivor of the atomic bomb attacks, Kunihiko Sakuma, worries about the shifting views in Japan.
I Now, I have a feeling that the nuclear taboo is starting to be broken.
He was an infant when the bomb fell on Hiroshima. And he says he cannot understand how a growing number of Japanese people are reaching the conclusion that nuclear weapons could offer protection, given the horrors he and others experienced.
If nuclear weapons are used, it's over, isn't it? That's what I want everyone to understand. What would happen if nuclear weapons were deployed? I want to ask that question to everyone, even President Trump. That's the point I want to make. Possessing nuclear weapons doesn't make us safe. Real security only exists when there is mutual trust between nations. Without that, there's no real sense of security.
Now, as Japan marks the 80th anniversary of Hiroshima, the country faces the question: can it honor the past while preparing for an uncertain future?